The Square Ball Podcast.
Welcome to the show. This is The West Stand. It's a show that debuted this season. It's out generally on a Monday and Friday, but we're mixing things up due to the couple of Monday fixtures that we've had. I think it's all back to normal next week. Either way, just look out for it on YouTube and you'll find it in your podcast app as well. We welcome guests from across the world of Leeds United, and in today's case, slightly beyond that. I'm Dan Moylan. With me is Michael Normanson.
Hello there.
And today's show is brought to you with NordVPN. Have we got anything new and sparkly and original to say about NordVPN? Not the top 20 carry it as one of their sponsors as well, but you should definitely go through our link, not theirs.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Is it the same offer? Who knows? Let's assume ours was better.
Oh, miles better. So are we going to resort to the big three with the lack of anything original to say at this point?
Big three for Nord would be, I guess,
Fastest in the world?
Fastest, protect your data when you're on public Wi-Fi, and
Virtual locations.
There you go. Big three.
So if you want to watch stuff from around the world on your streaming platform, and it's geo-locked, we discovered that word last time. That's an exciting word, isn't it?
Locked or blocked, or both.
Geo-lock-blocked.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You can save money, flights, hotel subscriptions, all that sort of business. If you don't know how a VPN works, I think you should drop Michael a tweet and he'll explain it at length.
I mean, it is genuinely very simple. You just click a button that says connect, don't you?
Yeah.
And pick a country.
Yeah.
You don't have to have technical knowledge.
We do it
So I do. I know how it works, but
yeah,
you wouldn't understand.
We do it frequently from here if we want to watch certain things from our German office.
Indeed.
Our German virtual office. You can find the link for this in the episode description, so check that out. nordvpn.com/TSB to get your exclusive discount. And it's risk-free as well. Nord offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. nordvpn.com/TSB, and have a look in the description box. And our guest today then is George Elick, one of the two hosts of Not the Top 20. Hello, George.
Hey, how's it going?
We're very good at the minute, aren't we, actually?
It's been a pleasant sort of week, 10 days, hasn't it?
Yeah, which has not necessarily always been the case when we've spoken to yourself and Ali from the show. Quick plug for the show before we get into it as well. Not the Top 20 can be found in all your podcast apps and players.
Yeah, we cover the EFL every Monday and Thursday. Monday is a review of the weekend's football, or in this week, I actually kind of foolishly, I felt for a bit, started the show by saying I thought Leeds were going to beat Sheffield United on Monday night. So when it was 1-0, I felt a little bit foolish, but luckily it came out okay. And then on Thursday, we do a betting show previewing the weekend's football. But it's just a shame that Leeds fans probably aren't going to be listening to us for too long, I don't think, the way things are going.
I mean this in the best way possible, and I said this to Ali earlier on in the year when we spoke to him. I hope not. I hope not, because this genuinely is one of the favourite shows that we do, isn't it? Because you always make us feel better when we speak to you and Ali. You actually said the word you used on your show on Monday was you would be surprised if Leeds didn't win against Sheffield United. It didn't feel like that for us, did it?
Not at half time, anyway. The second half, we came out and we did look better, I thought, but it was a while, wasn't it, until we actually pressed the dominance home. Yeah.
So what do you see then from your neutral, more considered perspective, George? Because you've been banging the drum for Leeds all year. You tipped us for the top on the same show, the Monday show. You said you thought that it'd be Burnley and Sheffield United playing for second place. That gives me comfort hearing that. And I think we are increasingly of a mind to agree with you, although there's that Leeds part of your brain goes, don't get too cocky, lads. Don't get too confident. We've been here before.
Yeah, and when I came on this show early in the season, I said you'd win by 10. And I still think you'll win by 10. It has been, I think there is just a massive gap between the quality of Leeds and the teams beneath them. And I think when you consider the last two games, it's taken a ridiculous turnaround to come from behind and win those games late. But the way that, certainly Sunderland looked to defend their 1-goal lead. I got some flack on Twitter for basically praising Régis Debris and saying that I thought the way that they sat back and defended was actually the right way to do it, because Leeds had really, in my mind, looked like scoring from open play. It was only the set pieces that yielded the goals. And then against Sheffield United, who Chris Wilder obviously took the game to Leeds a little bit more, made some very attacking substitutions, but you pick them off so easily when they committed men forward. That was how the equaliser came, where suddenly Leeds had an overwhelming advantage in transition, which you were able to punish them with. I think the Leeds are currently kind of operating as a team who would probably be on more points than the bottom three teams in the Premier League right now, compared to. And if you look at the league table, I would say that it's obvious that there have been games where Leeds have dropped points where they shouldn't have done, in my mind. Hull being an obvious case, being 3-1 up and drawing that game 3-3, whereas the likes of Sheffield United, who have recently been outplayed by Plymouth and Portsmouth at home and won those games, or Burnley, who have conceded no goals from about 70 shots and 8 XG or whatever it is, you could argue that they're probably running a bit hot. So the gap between you and the others should be even wider. I'd be, famous last words and everything, commentators curse, and maybe this will be clipped up in a few weeks and I'll be made to look like an idiot. But if the performance levels don't dip, there's just, I can't see a way where you don't finish top and it'll be really comfy.
Don't worry, you're in good company when it comes to saying stupid stuff and being made to look like an idiot when you're on this show. Don't worry about that. Do you think it's now a 3-horse race after we beat Sunderland and then Sunderland lost to Hull over the weekend?
I think it's a 2-horse race for seconds. Like, I mean, I really do. Like, I'm sorry to say it, and I know I can see you looking at each other, but from here, for you to drop out of the top two altogether would take such a collapse. And I know this is Leeds, and I know that it must be quite disconcerting as a Leeds fan to see you get 2 wins that were so unlike the Leeds we've come to know and love, like clutch wins, like right at the death. Keeping calm, creating the chances you need and getting over the line. The gap now is relatively big in terms of the points between yourselves, between you guys and Burnley and Sheffield United. I think Sunderland are now going to struggle to battle into that battle for the top 2. Obviously, it's not done, But if this was a horse race, you're trading massive odds on favourite, and you're 7 lengths clear heading up to the last fence. It's just whether or not you fall. Yeah,
I was going to say the Opta analyst account on Twitter has us at 88.4% chance of finishing top. This is where they run the season like 10,000 times or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then finishing second 9.7% and finishing third only 1.8%. Wow, that's terrifying, isn't it?
Does it feel like that?
Not quite that degree of comfort, I don't think. I genuinely think I feel about, if I had to put a number on it, about 75% confident at the minute of going up.
It's more, really. It is more.
Yeah.
Do you think 1 in 4 times from here you don't finish in the top 2?
No, but I'm scared to attach more confidence to it, because it's funny, right? After this, I don't know, was it going into the Sunderland game? But it was definitely going into the Sheffield United game. I felt completely relaxed. It's weird, and that's not the Leeds way of doing things. Mm. And it wasn't because I was cocky and confident about it. I don't know, maybe just on some subatomic level, I feel like Leeds very occasionally will flip over into this completely bulletproof mode. For example, the bulletproof mode, the Bielsa run-in after we got that Cardiff defeat out of the way a few years back.
Yeah, you're misremembering this.
No, but we just started winning, and then we won, and then we won again, and then we won again. But there was a time during that where Leeds just felt bulletproof. And I'm not suggesting that Leeds will be bulletproof between now and the end of the season completely, but it feels like that at the minute. I recognise that feeling, as rare as it is. I just feel like I know, and maybe my degree of confidence has just tipped over into being high enough now that they're not worrying me at the minute. I think they look bulletproof.
I say you're misremembering that run towards the end of that season. We were 0-0.
It's probably for the best, mate. It's for the best. It's for the best.
We were drawing at Swansea until Pablo comes up and scores that late goal. The Barnsley game was hell on earth.
But I can remember him scoring that goal.
The Barnsley game, we did not feel bulletproof in that Barnsley game.
No, we did not.
No. We were all watching it thinking, what on earth is going on?
But that was the final push over the line, when sometimes you can get the little wobbles. But there was in that spell, and the 5 games before it as well, before the COVID break, like the 4-0 at Hull, when we were it was like flow state almost. And I'm seeing that from Leeds again. And I think deep down I know it, but I can't have absolute confidence. And it feels dangerous to me to go much beyond 3 quarters, just because decades of watching Leeds does this to somebody.
I will say, as a spell of games since the 7-0, which is something we've never seen in our lifetimes.
And I didn't see.
And of course,
I missed it.
You missed it, didn't you? But then a couple of really good away wins, then the 2 comeback wins against title rivals.
Exactly.
It's one of the best spells of Leeds games I can ever remember, in terms of both results and just for the drama of it and how much it's all meant. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, we were saying, George, on the match ball after the game on Monday, like, it feels like something's happening at the minute, and I think it's important that we enjoy it, because I had a conversation with Ali earlier this season where we were saying the lack of jeopardy was almost weird at times, and I think we hadn't fully come to terms with how stratified the league has become, because on your most recent Monday show, you're an Oxford fan. You went to the Hawthorns to see Oxford away at West Brom, who I will ask you about actually in a few minutes because they're our next opponents. But in that show, you said, you went to the loo a few minutes before half time and you had that dilemma of, do I go back to my seat for 6 minutes here or just get in the queue for the bar? And you broke with tradition and went to the bar because you knew.
Yeah.
And it was because of the absolutely glaring difference in quality between West Brom, who are sort of 5th, 6th neck of the woods, and where Oxford are. And then we feel like we are streets ahead, probably, at least mathematically, of West Brom. So I think it's taken us some time to get our heads around what the Championship has become versus what I think we remember it as being last season. And even the Bielsa promotion season was a lot closer than this. I think we were on the same points as Sunderland are currently, or thereabouts, in that season where we won it.
Yeah, and we had West Brom and Brentford were very much around our heels as well, weren't they, at that point, even though we were on the verge of pulling away. It felt like it was only actually till relatively late in the season that we did kind of create a big gap.
Has it become that stratified?
For sure. I mean, I think the gap now between, Leeds are quite a weird case in themselves, where there's, I think, a very strong argument to be made that they were one of the top 2 teams last season who, for various reasons, didn't get over the line, in part because of just an incredible season from Ipswich and then just a really bad performance at Wembley, which I think it feels to me like Daniel Farke and Leeds learnt a lot from, because I think there are massive similarities, especially in the Sunderland game to the Wembley final against Southampton. But that day you didn't like scoring and you couldn't find a way through, whereas both in these last 2 games, you found a way to make that territorial and possession dominance count. But normally when a team who comes down, isn't able to bounce back up, that they're picked off and they get weaker season on season. And obviously Somerville moved on, but it feels to me like Leeds just strengthened in terms of players brought in. And, I'm sure you guys have spoken at length about Tanaka being probably one of the best buys ever. I mean, in terms of the money spent and the quality player that he is. I thought he was absolutely unbelievable on Monday night. Just inch perfect in everything he did in possession. I thought the finish for the goal, the header, was much better than he'll get credit for, because he had to basically get it past the keeper and over the defender of the back post. And he did so brilliantly. The team, to me, this side feels stronger than last season, and that's rare. So to have a parachute payment team who come down and then improve, having not stayed up, is what I think sets you apart from those that have come down. And also, frankly, it's a pretty weak bunch that came down. The fact that it's Burnley and Sheffield United, who to my mind aren't particularly good, relegated Premier League sides. You compare them to Leicester last season. Obviously, what Burnley are doing from a defensive standpoint is incredible. It just means that you're just clear of everyone else. And then there are issues in the rest of the league where, because teams with parachute payments generally come back up again, what you're creating now is an environment where there aren't that many teams in receipt of them, which means that therefore the gap between those who've just come down and the rest is even bigger. So it's a bit of an issue and it's a bit of a worry. Like, I really hope that if and when Leeds get promoted, you're the team that buck this trend in terms of the struggles to come back, because it's not particularly healthy and it's not particularly fun just seeing, this will be the second year in a row where the 3 teams who get promoted come back down again. And that just creates a massive gap between those left of the Championship and those who they've got to compete against coming down. Yeah,
it just makes football less interesting and less fun, doesn't it? You need to feel like you've got a chance. That's the whole point of what being a football fan is predicated on. It feeds on your hope, doesn't it?
And there's an element where, we're lucky enough to go to the playoff final every year. And every year, you see the League Two fans celebrating at the end, and you can see them challenging in League One. You see the League One fans. I was one of them last season. It's going to be tough in the Championship, but there's also precedent for teams doing okay when they go up. You sit there and you watch the Samson fans last season going bananas, and you sit there thinking, "See you in 12 months." And they probably know it as well. It's so hard. And in a way, nights like, I'd have done anything to be in the away end as a Leeds fan on Monday night. It's moments like that are so special in terms of promotion season, when you know that it's going to be really, really tough and there might be few and far between the year after.
Yeah. Last night, just before I went to bed, I watched the last sort of 15 or 20 minutes again from equaliser onwards. The time I spent most on was that header. And actually, you're right about how good that cushioned header was. Under those circumstances, a minute from the end to win it against the second place side. And it happened completely instinctively by Tanaka, but there's just something really magical about all that. But the main thing I was looking at, I kept running it back, and I must have done it about 15 or 20 times. I'd run it back to the corner being taken, but then I'd watch different parts of the crowd, both the away end and also, via Schadenfreude, the Sheffield United fans. And you can see, when they all kind of go, they almost throw their arms down in frustration, like an angry toddler, that kind of thing. And then there are people who are up and out of their seats and walking towards the exits before that ball has even been kicked out of the back of the net. You just know, you're like...
I saw a great clip, I think it was on Twitter, with someone filming, because obviously away fans at the bottom, home fans in the upper tier, and they were filming Celebrate, and they turned the camera, and you can see a Sheffield United fan trying to almost grab the phone off them because they're so annoyed. And it's just the whole scene of it is just brilliant in games like that.
And I did watch that away end with envious eyes. Like I've been in away ends where it goes absolutely bananas like that, and it is something special. And I watched that and I thought, I would have loved to have been in that away end. But then again, having got Sunderland the week before, we were saying on the show, I think it's it's up there. I think in some of the best ever. It's in my top 5 ever. I think that just the nature of it and what it symbolised. I think.
Yeah.
But to do that twice in 2 weeks, it's a bit much, isn't it?
It's been quite intense, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it's been lots of fun.
You've missed an opportunity to talk about Tanaka anyway.
No, I spotted him very early, so I feel like I've said all my. The joke here, by the way, is that it was on his first sub appearance for 5 minutes, and I said he looks really, really quality, and I described him as a generational talent, tongue half in cheek. And It turns out he's absolutely brilliant.
Spot on.
But
do you remember as well? Do you remember when you had the injury crisis early in the season? And I remember we had so many Leeds fans messaging us being like, "You're so positive about Leeds, but we've got Rothwell and Tanaka are only two centre midfielders," as if they were like two kind of League One players, and then it turns out actually they're both brilliant.
Yeah, I mean Rothwell was very much an afterthought of a signing, even though he came in quite early. We were all like, "Oh well, he's just a bit of a squad filler," and I think he's addressed this himself, hasn't he, in recent interviews. So he's been one of my favourite players this season, and I think again you've spoken about it on your show, just where he picks it up and just runs. Yeah,
I mean, I'm surprised that you play Gruev as often at the moment rather than playing it feels like in possession, your ball progression with Rothwell in the team is so much stronger. If anything, I'd you'd think you'd play Tanaka or Rothwell to start and then bring Gruev on if you're defending a lead. It's you've lost the last 2 games 1-0 with Tanaka and Gruev on the pitch, and you've won them both 5-0 in aggregate with Tanaka and Rothwell.
It's a good shout, that, actually. But although Farke does seem to be conservative with these things, doesn't he? He doesn't like to give too much away. He prefers structure and order. But you're right, though. That does go out the window somewhat. Your game plan goes out the window when you find yourself going 1 down. I think that the changes and putting Rothwell on, definitely drove us on Monday.
I think it's definitely made a difference this year as well of having those options, because last year it was Kamara, who would never, ever shoot, never really move the ball forwards, Gruev, who did the same, and Ampadu, who is the natural holding midfielder. So we were rotating between the 3 of them all the time, and it was all much of a muchness, really.
The number of times we had groans where you'd see one of them pick it up and you'd think, either run with it or try and pass it between those 2 players in front of you to your friend who's in front of you. And they didn't. They'd turn and pass it back, and it just lacked that. But I think that's been one of the key things. I don't know about you, Michael, just based on what you said there, George, about us as probably being a better side. I think we're definitely a more balanced side. I think we've got more quality spread across the rest of the team, and more attacking threat as well.
Yeah, and I think with the players we sold as well, we were able to maybe bring in these players because we've sold essentially a right back as he was for us for 40 million, which is not a 40 million pound right back coming out of the Championship is not something that happens very often. And I understand Gray isn't a right back, well, he's a centre back as he plays for Spurs, but I think his ceiling is obviously incredibly high. So is Ruter's probably, but how much they actually added to the team versus the players we've been able to bring in instead, I don't know. I think there's certainly a strong case to say that Tanaka and Rothwell have made more difference than those 2 did last year.
Yeah, and more impact on the wings as well. The options we've got out wide, George, are scary. And we've said so many times, it must be such a pain in the arse when you're a fullback and you've spent 60, 70 minutes defending against, Dan James and Mana Solomon, and then on comes Willie Nonto and or Laji Ramazani.
Yeah, for sure. But and having that multiple threat, like last season, again, going back to, I promised I did watch more Leeds last season than just the playoff final, but going back to that playoff final where it was Kamara and Gruev in the middle. And again, you really struggled to progress the ball effectively rather than just being a pretty one-dimensional attack, just giving the ball to someone on the left-hand side and being like, come on, Crescencio, do what you've always done this season and cut inside and try and score. Whereas now it feels like your threat is way more kind of multifaceted, where you've got, obviously Solomon on the left kind of doing a bit of a a Sunderland impression, but often getting on the ball a bit higher, I'd say. But still, that kind of creative force who can go on the outside, but also likes coming onto his right foot. Dan James, who's been just a much better player this season. He had a pretty good season last season, but in my mind has to be in the conversation for player of the season in the Championship. Even Aronson's come in, I guess, and offered something a bit different. So there's no doubt that Jorginho Ruto is a better player than Aronson. But for whatever reason, his kind of relentless running and pressing has probably got the best out of Peru. And then, as we say, with Tanaka coming in to midfield and knitting everything together, it's just there may not be the stardust, I guess, from last season, but as kind of a well-oiled machine and a multifaceted, there are different ways to attack, and maybe it means you're harder to play against, coupled with the fact that from a defensive perspective, especially at Ellen Road, you barely concede any chances, let alone goals, which makes it a pretty good platform for these players to thrive in.
I don't know about you, Michael, and perhaps we can get an external perspective on this from George as well, but it feels to me like this team, the thing that's happened in recent weeks is it's getting its own identity. It's created its own little moments of folklore, which perhaps it lacked before. And in that sense, it's probably emerging a little bit now, finally. And I think this is more significant and more important than we realise, but it's emerging from the shadow of Bielsa a little bit, because we're on to potentially beat that points total, God willing and all that.
It's strange, isn't it? I was thinking about this in comparison to Liverpool as well, because obviously there's going to be, it looks like there'll be a symmetry of them winning it, us winning it, and how they feel about winning it this time around versus them winning it under Klopp and us winning it this time versus under Bielsa. And I get the feeling we're probably not like it quite as much, even though it's potentially going to be more emphatic in terms of a victory, which is a little bit weird.
I do think, though, that we could never see past getting out of the Championship when we were in it before, because we've been in it for so long. And I think the promotion under Bielsa in many ways was the end goal. And then the 9th place finish in the Premier League the year after was something of a bonus on top of it. And then obviously all the stuff that followed. But I think we now know this is just a necessary. We've been up there and we've experienced it, and we know how hard it is. This is a necessary step on a bigger pathway, I think, in the mind of the fans and probably the ownership as well. So it's framed differently, and what's happening now is framed through the experience of what happened then as well 5 years ago.
Yeah, I do think the last few weeks has given this team the moments of identity, though, hasn't it? The 7-0, the comeback wins. These are the bits that you'll remember. The season and a bit that went before it, there were some good wins in there, but a lot of it felt fairly functional, I suppose you would say. Whereas, there's definitely been some bits that you can put in a compilation now. Yeah,
I think so. A team that has got an emerging identity and an attacking identity. Where I think, again, earlier in the season, we weren't quite sure about that, George, but it feels like they're cementing a thing now. They're probably cementing their own stories, their own place in our folklore. Because we've had the conversation here of we sell T-shirts and merch and so on and so forth. It's like, it was really easy to commemorate the promotion under Bielsa with T-shirts and slogans. And we've had conversations, we've dared to have conversations about it now, like what if? And we've had to really think hard about how you frame it. So yeah, it is different. Do you see a team that has recognised its identity in recent weeks?
Yeah, I think so. And I'd say that you can't be as dominant as Leeds are and not have a pretty solid identity. And I think Daniel Farke deserves immense credit for the team that he's built this season. I was going to kind of ask you guys where you guys sit on Farke now, because it felt like certainly last season, and I guess in the first couple of games this season, when things haven't necessarily gone that well, the finger's been pointed pretty squarely at him for that being the case. But as good as this playing squad is, I don't think you can be as dominant and be as good a side as Leeds are without the head coach or manager doing a pretty incredible job. The flip side of that, and it's something we've spoken about quite a lot, is that I'm of kind of the increasing belief that the job of that there couldn't be two more different jobs in football as getting up to the Championship and staying up in the Premier League, and that is creating quite an awkward environment where the man who gets you out of the league almost certainly won't be the man to keep you in it. And we've seen with Daniel Farke twice at Norwich that he failed to keep Norwich in the Premier League. So where do you guys stand on Farke now? How much credit does he deserve, and would you want him to be your manager next season?
I'm now tipping over into a position of feeling like that dynamic, as true as it is, almost feels a little bit unfair. Whereas I was a little bit indifferent towards it, really, actually, earlier in the season. But I thought, well, if we go, fine. Because I still wouldn't be entirely surprised if he didn't see next season at all. Still wouldn't be. I think he's now earning himself a shot at it.
Yeah, I think so.
Which in many ways you might perceive as a problem, depending on, how true that proves to be, George. But do you know what? I'm just enjoying the here and now. Finally, I think it's really, really important to do that because these don't come around often. And I say these, we haven't got there yet, but I'm really mindful that I missed the 2010 promotion from League One. I wasn't at that game against Bristol Rovers. We were denied last time because of COVID. I haven't seen a promotion since 1990 when I was in Bournemouth. It's something to try and enjoy, I think, while it's ongoing. So I'm trying to just live in the here and now. I can't deny the truth of what you said, George, but it feels a little bit like a problem for another day is the way that I'm trying to think about it. But my respect for the job that Farke has done has increased immeasurably, I think, in these last few weeks. Again, because the club is sort of cementing its own folklore this season, and Farke has spoken about how emotional a club Leeds is. And I think you need incredibly broad shoulders in order to take it on, given the history of near misses and failures and chokes and things like that, just to have the calmness that I think he's displayed. And I guess it's almost like trusting the process, isn't it? So my respect for him has gone up immeasurably in the last few weeks because we've seen what this team's capable of.
I think this run of games as well, the criticism was that it's defensive, it's predictable. And actually in this run of games, we've had a 7-0, we've had big wins at Coventry and Watford, which we could have won those games by more, if anything. And I feel like the fact we're actually going at teams a bit more and we've had some gritty wins, he's earning the right another go at it next year, which sounds ridiculous, I know, because getting a team up is not an easy thing to do. But it felt like it was not inconceivable that we go up and then sack him anyway. Whereas I feel like assuming we can kind of keep a run of form going and we can finish, in line with the points per game we've been tracking out this season, we're going to get to around 100 points if we can do that. And I think if that's the case, then he obviously gets another go next year. Whether or not
I would love to see the not if I say this, but the Talk Sport social clips. If Leeds get to 100 points and sack their manager on the eve of promotion, would be sensational. Simon Jordan would be livid.
It would be nuts. It's nuts, isn't it? In any logical analysis says it's nuts, but as you're saying, like the gap between getting out of this division and staying up, it feels like a big gap. I actually think maybe is maybe the approach to this dictated by who comes up and who stays up as well.
I guess the other logical analysis though would be how many teams that come up sack their manager within the first dozen games of the season,
having recruited for him in the summer.
Exactly, and then so I guess there is an argument around that as well. But
and there's also with Leicester last season where they had their manager taken from them, which is probably not the worst thing given the way that Maresca plays. It's hard to see Maresca taking a kind of a newly promoted team into the Premier League and keeping them up. So they had the opportunity to replace him with kind of a pragmatist and someone who maybe would play slightly more. His style of football would be more suited to it. They brought Steve Cooper in, and obviously he was sacked relatively soon after that. So it may not just be the manager; it may just be the gap is so big that it's hard to stay up. But it's also, if it is Leeds and Burnley, it's going to be an interesting case study next season. I feel like we might be jumping the gun a little bit with this conversation, but they're the two best defensive teams we've seen in the Championship, certainly since we've been covering it, and it's normally a very poor defence and conceding a lot of goals that undoes these teams that do get promoted. So if there are two teams who maybe can make a bit of a fist of it, and I think there's no coincidence that certainly Scott Parker, who's someone who's been stung twice before with getting promoted out of the Championship and then shipping loads of goals and getting sacked, that he's approached this job very differently in terms of making sure that Burnley are a side who absolutely do not concede chances and have a solid defensive foundation.
My instinct with Burnley is that they're so defensive that if they go up, they'll just turn a load of 0-0 and 1-0 wins into a load of 1-0 and 2-0 defeats.
Yeah, you need goals to stay up.
Because they have very, very little threat going forwards. If against a higher quality of opposition, even against mid to sort of low Premier League teams like Crystal Palace or someone, will still put a couple of goals past Burnley. Is the thing. So I do wonder if they need some more ideas.
Yeah, I think so. I think you need goals to stay up, don't you? There's no two ways about it. If you struggle to score, you just won't stay up. And I think that's partly why I'm not thinking too far ahead at this stage, because I think there will be, if we go up, there will be a bit of a shock and awe approach to transfers in the summer. I think they'll go pretty hardcore, and it might mean some players that we like leaving. And I don't want to think about that yet. I want to like them and just enjoy this moment for now, because I think we probably need a new spine of the team and some fullbacks. So it's quite a lot we'd need to add to it. I think you're probably talking at least half a dozen high quality first team starters, which I don't want to think about yet, because this team has deserved its shot now. I think to have its moment in the sun. You know,
they got slated for it, but the only team who've successfully transitioned quickly from a championship side and one that got promoted through the playoffs to a team battling the top end of the Premier League in Nottingham Forest. They brought in 30.
Yeah.
Which at the time people thought was a terrible decision. But actually, when you look at it, completely recycling the squad from being a championship squad into one that's you're recruiting from the top levels of European football, even though they got a lot of it wrong early on, it actually ended up being the thing that's probably enabled them to do that transition. Yeah.
And I think one of the things when we've spoken to Angus Kinnear in recent years in his annual chat is he said, we didn't recycle the promotion squad quick enough, but probably didn't have the means to do so. Whether that's a different story with a bit more
of course, if
financial clout now, I don't know.
If we do go up, we get Jack Harrison and Rasmus Christensen back. Which
wait, mate.
Which is great news.
Cannot wait. I mean, to matters at hand, George, then you saw West Brom in the flesh at the weekend as an Oxford visitor. I've just looked at the points difference between the sides. So it's 13 points between where Oxford are in 18th at the minute and West Brom in 5th, who are on 51. But then it's 24 points up to where Leeds are, between Leeds and West Brom. So what's in store for us at the weekend?
They were pretty good. I mean, they came into the game not in great form. I think the transition from Carlos Corberán to Tony Mowbray is pretty big in terms of playing style, but also just character and the way I think they look to kind of manage their players. And it hasn't been a massive surprise to see some Mowbray performances be very, very strong and impressive, especially at home, but some kind of struggling to hit the mark. But this would mean they were way better than us. They're a side who look to I think they look to take the game to Leeds. Tony Mowbray's side, he's all about players expressing themselves and being attack minded. I can't really see them looking to drop into a kind of a low block and look to frustrate you unless they go ahead, which I guess then in part that'll just be Leeds' pressure telling. Adam Armstrong's come in obviously in January on loan, who improves them from an attacking standpoint because Josh Madger has been injured for a while. He was pretty lively. Tom Fellows on the right wing is a really good ball carrier, a good winger who's maybe. He started the season very, very well, but he's played a lot of football for a young player, and maybe we're seeing the impact of that. He's certainly having less of an impact at the moment than he was previously. But like every championship game, I expect Leeds to be able to deal with their threat relatively comfortably, and they'll struggle to keep you at bay. Like West Bromwich Albion dominating Oxford on a Saturday. Yes, it'll give them belief and it'll get the fans buoyant, and it's pretty big in terms of their hopes for a top 6 finish, but it doesn't really have too much bearing on how they're going to perform against a completely different side, where on Saturday they were able to completely dictate the tempo, play a really high line, and whenever Oxford got on the ball, it was just miles away from goal. And that's just not going to be the case in the upcoming game. So yeah, I'd still be relatively bullish that the Leeds will have enough for them.
I'm kind of glad to hear that. I hope he does set them up to attack, because I think you said recently, Michael, you'd prefer us to be facing a Mowbray side rather than a Corberán side. Yeah,
I mean, apart from anything else, just from a way to spend a couple of hours in a stadium watching a team defend very deep and take a minute over every goal kick, it wouldn't have been an awful lot of fun, would it? Whereas,
especially off the high of the last 2 games as well.
Yeah, going into what you know would be an incredibly defensive performance. I mean, the game at their place at the start of this year was absolutely awful.
It was almost like a voluntary stalemate.
Yeah, neither team was. Everyone was like, yeah, 0-0, fine, shake hands on it. Is how it felt from about 10 minutes
Carlos. In. Yeah, and the Burnley away game was almost exactly the same.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I'm optimistic about us hopefully getting something out of that.
Well, I'm glad to see Mowbray back as well. Yeah, he just seems like a good bloke.
Great man.
Yeah. I feel like probably. He's like the uncle of the championship or something, is Mowbray. I can imagine him in loads of different scenarios, just being a nice bloke. But he's a nice dad. He'd be a good granddad. If he was on a stag do with someone's uncle who was there, you'd be like, oh, what a top bloke. I'm really glad he's here. So yeah, it's good. I'm glad he's back, and I hope he's enjoying his revels.
And heading into Easter, we come down to Oxford towards the back end of the season. George, how do you view that as an Oxford fan rather than an independent championship fan? Are you thinking we could be in trouble there? is it could be a.
I mean, when
high
you're
score.
talking about where you've witnessed promotions, where better to witness a promotion than overlooking a bowlplex in a car park in a three stands ground. I think from an Oxford perspective, we just have to hope that you've ideally won the league the game before, and then
that is game week. I should say that's game week 43, so it's right towards the end of the season. Yeah.
So you can come to Oxford with a either drunk or hungover, both the fans, players, management, and then roll over for us to get an all important 3 points to stay up. That'd be the dream, because the way things are going at the moment, I think we chalk that one down for 0 points if we're going to try and project where the points are going to come from between now and the end of the season to keep us up.
Are you still worried about relegation? You've got a decent cushion there, haven't you?
It's really difficult to know, because it doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously, ideally, we get the points needed to stay up. We're playing pretty badly. It's all about Argyle, Derby and Luton. Like, all three of those teams have to overtake us if we're going to go down. And we've currently got at least an 8 point cushion on them. Is there any reason to think that any of those three teams are going to suddenly put together the kind of run needed to get to the mid 40s? I don't really see it. I tweeted about it this morning. I've had loads of Argyle fans tell me that their points per game over the last 6 games is 1.5, which would mean that if they do that, they're going to get to 48. They seem to ignore the fact that they haven't won any of the last 3 games. And they only drew at home to Cardiff last time out because of a red card. So I think we'll be okay, but I think it'll be because the teams beneath us are just really poor, rather than us kind of picking up the wins needed to get to a points tally. Normally it's 50. It's kind of seen as the golden number, whereas this time around, I honestly think unless things change, you could stay up with 41, 42.
Yeah, you had this discussion, didn't you, on your Monday show? I listened with interest, and I hadn't really thought about it all that much. Thankfully, it's the nice privilege of being at the top end of the table. But yeah, you would automatically think it'd be the 50-point mark.
It's like in the Premier League, you need about 25 to stay up this year. It's going to be a ridiculously low total.
Which again, it speaks to that problem of the gap between the divisions, doesn't it? And bridging that gap. But yeah, I mean, like Luton are on 28 points from 34 games, so they're running under 1 point per game.
Absolutely.
So really they'd have to get 22 points from 12 games if they're going to get to 50.
It's going to have to be an incredible run of form, isn't it? And you could see, someone like Plymouth might win the odd game here and there, but at some point they've got to regress to the mean in that series of games. You don't see them putting together 4 or 5 on the spin. And if they do, then you got to say fair enough, because that's a complete 180 in terms of form and would be, the opposite of why they're down there in the first place.
We play them on the final day, don't we, down there? So let's hope it's all done and dusted one way or another.
Yeah, we don't want to repeat a Bournemouth in 1990 at the bank holiday weekend. I think if it's all done and dusted by then, they'll probably everything will be saved by the fact that hopefully it will be done by then, and it's a bloody long way to Plymouth.
It's a long way to Bournemouth.
It is, but you could do it in like sort of 4 or 5 hours, whereas Plymouth is stretching out.
Do you think those extra few hours will put people off?
Yeah, the roads into Plymouth from this part, it's not good.
Fair enough.
Probably shouldn't. But I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I feel almost dirty talking about it, thinking about promotion. But you can't help but do it, can you? That's the thing. When you sat there like this, you do
98%.
I know. Doesn't feel that high to me. But if that's what they're saying, then good. I'm glad.
We're nearly there.
And you stand by your prediction, then George, just offer us one last crumb of comfort before we sign off on this show. It's us for the top, and everybody else is playing well. 2 are playing for second place.
Leeds by 10, and I think there's going to be a kind of mini playoff final, hopefully between Burnley and Sheffield United. I think it's 3 games before the end where they face each other, and I think if there's any, if it's as tight as we can expect it to be, that should be massive in terms of who finishes second. I mean, obviously, you don't know what's going to happen, and you have Ilan Meslier in goal, who you got to say after a torrid first 20 minutes, I even tweeted that he should get subbed. But he was brilliant, I thought, after that, and responded really well to obviously being targeted by Chris Wilder and Sheffield United. But yeah, I think you'll win it. I'd be amazed if by full time at the Kassam Stadium in April, you're not at least already confirmed as being promoted.
That makes me feel all right.
Okay, I'll accept that.
I think. George, thank you very much. Check out Not the Top
Cheers,
20 in your podcast feed, and we will maybe catch up at the end of the season, and hopefully for the last time.
Wave goodbye.
Ever. Yeah. Take it easy. See you soon.
Cheers, guys. Speak soon.
The Square Ball Podcast.